Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to Kim Ades. There's a bit of background here that I need to stage for everyone because she's such a wonderful guest to join us today. It's my pleasure to announce her as the founder of the Frame of Mind Coaching and the co-founder of the journal that talks back. Kim is recognized as a pioneer in the field of leadership coaching and thought mastery. She uses her unique philosophy and direct coaching style to help leaders identify their blind spots and learn to direct their thinking to achieve extraordinary results. She's an author, speaker, entrepreneur, coach, and mom of 5. Yes, she's doing it all. Kim is dedicated to teaching her powerful coaching processes to leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs worldwide. A warm welcome to you, Kim. We're so glad that you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I am so excited to be here, and I'm especially excited to hear that you are on the East Coast of Canada. And so I feel like I'm talking to a neighbor, so I'm very happy about that.
Thank you, Kim. Likewise. So let's get into this. So help us understand your background as a coach. And selfishly, I'm really excited to hear about this because I mean you've been there on the onset of when coaching was a thing, right up to current, where coaching is the cool thing to do.
Yeah. So I've been coaching for 20 years. And I would say to you that I've been coaching, as you say, formally for 20 years and informally my whole entire life. Ever since I was a kid, I was the one that people came to discuss their problems, right? Like they would, hey, Kim, can we talk? So it's kind of in my DNA, in my blood, but you're 100% right. When I first started formally coaching, the way of the world in coaching was very different than it is now. The focus at the time was heavily bent on accountability-based coaching, on making sure that people are doing all the things they need to do in order to reach their goals. And now things have changed. We're much more interested in how people think and how their thinking influences and impacts their outcomes. When I started coaching, that's what I was working on at the time, 20 years ago. So what happened to me was I was exposed to the coaching world and saw how people were coaching. And intuitively, I thought to myself, there's something wrong with that picture. A lot of people know what they're supposed to be doing. They're just not doing it. And I have a team of coaches. We coach leaders. We coach like the C-suite, the leaders, the people who are typically highly driven and have a high degree of motivation. With those people, they're already moving and shaking. They're already doing amazing things. They're not always getting the results they're looking for. And it's not because they need to be held accountable. It's because they have a blind spot and they're not aware of this critical relationship between their thinking and their outcomes.
Yeah.
For me, from the very beginning.
Yeah, if you don't mind me chiming in, Kim, and going back to a very important piece that you said, the C-suite that you work with they're motivated, they're engaged, they have their own accountability, And I would add, they're willing to do the work. One thing that I learned in coaching, so I guess my background or past life was an HR practitioner. And jumping into coaching, I thought, getting my certificate would be, easy because it's, academia stuff. You get your syllabus, you do your thing, you do your work, you pass your exam, thesis, test, what have you, and you get that kind of that accreditation or certification. I have to tell you, Kim, I don't know about you, but coaching rocked me in the sense that it's not just academia driven. It really helps you level up your self awareness, your blind spots, your areas of growth, and you can really only coach where you're jumping off from. So I think it's really important to pause and identify to all the leaders or professionals out there, even that when it comes to coaching, expecting that the coach is going to be your, guiding light is appropriate, but not expecting that they're going to solve everything for you or on your behalf. And I think that might be a bit of mixed misconceptions or messaging.
I'm happy you use the word guide
Yeah.
because I really, really do think that a coach is a guide.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that many coaches don't take the front seat in guiding the client experience. I
Mm-hmm.
believe I see that. I've experienced it myself as a client.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the role is really the role of a guide.
Mm-hmm.
And what does a guide do? Like imagine you are going on a trip and you've hired a guide to take you through town. Okay.
Correct.
Let's say it's not even through town. Maybe they're taking you through caves, right? What do? They're at the front of the line, right? They're leading the way and they're shining light in different corners, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they're saying, let's like, here's a path. And then maybe they'll shine a light in a place where you didn't know existed or you couldn't see. And suddenly like you're noticing and you're experiencing this dark cave in a way you would have never experienced it before because
Mm-hmm.
the guide is taking you down the path, but also shining light in interesting places that are hard to see or are tricky or even dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the concept of guide is a good one.
Yeah, yeah, I see you. So leaning into this a little bit further, Kim, tell us more about your approach. So hearing you in that you've seen basically a gap in the coaching industry and the approach. So what's your distinct approach? What's your special sauce?
Yeah, the special sauce is, as I said before, I felt like a lot of high, highly driven individuals knew what to do.
Yes.
They know what to do. They're not always doing it. Or if they're doing it, they're getting outcomes that they don't want. So they're not doing it in a way that's yielding the results they're looking for. And the
Mm,
question was why? What's getting in the way? So what I really wanted to do was get into people's heads and understand how they see the world, how they think, how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the people around them, how they feel about their productivity, about their capacity, all of that. I just wanted
mhm,
to understand what they
mhm.
believe to be true about themselves and everything else that they hear, smell, taste, and touch. So how do you do that? How do you get into someone's head? So
Right.
I decided from the very, very beginning that I would ask my clients to journal in a private and secure online journaling space where I could read their journals.
Hmm.
So what happens is at the beginning of the week, I give them a journaling question or a prompt. They start journaling, and every time they journal, I receive it. And I'm able then to answer or respond or dig deeper, ask more questions to their journal. So it's a back and forth exchange on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Why daily? Because that sounds like a lot, right?
It
Because
does.
because this enables me to collect relevant data for me to be able to pull together patterns, patterns of thought, patterns of belief, patterns of behavior, the patterns that help me understand how this person is wired, how they operate, what's important to them, how they react and respond to certain situations and relationships. That information is critical for me to be able to coach them effectively. But the
Hmm.
second part of it is when I am interacting with my client every single day, what happens? Trust gets formed faster, more deeply. And trust is critical for us to move forward. But
Hmm.
also, they are doing the work every day. When they are doing the work every day, what happens? They make progress at lightning speed. So, this whole kind of combination of elements produces outstanding results consistently from client to client. And we have a team of coaches from coach to coach.
So what I'm hearing is that it's like a two-prong approach. So there's the daily work of the electronic journal that the coach is privy to and understanding, aside from that's confidential. And there's some sort of cadence of in-person or virtual coaching one-on-one.
Exactly. So it's
Okay.
weekly. So we would have a weekly call, and in between every call, they would journal.
I have so many questions from a place of curiosity. How is this different than psychology? I think there needs to be more education about
The difference is I'm not looking like, how do I explain it? I'm looking for how they exist in the world. I
that.
don't see them as broken.
Right.
What I see is that they think in ways that sometimes sabotage or are counter to their desires. And my job is just to show them how their thinking leads to the outcomes they are currently getting. And if they're not happy with the outcomes they're currently getting, my job is to help them rethink their approach, rethink their strategy, rethink their, we have beliefs about everything. Our beliefs will determine what we achieve and what we don't achieve.
Absolutely.
And so this process enables me to see clearly and to quickly identify the places where people are struggling where they don't need to struggle. It's not about fixing the past. The past is interesting. It tells me about their present, but I'm not here to heal past wounds.
Right. Right.
Now, that's not my goal.
I enjoy your perspective and how you're reframing the way that you look at coaching, that the person's not broken. You're really looking to be curious about them, understand the patterns, and shed the light where they would like to go. And
right. And sometimes where they aren't even aware of what's possible that they could go to, right?
Because of those blind spots. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Agreed, 100%. So there's this daily practice. How do you educate your clients that, have the motivation, they have the drive, but the admin stuff just isn't their thing?
What do you mean by admin stuff?
So like journaling, taking notes, like all of that type of stuff. Maybe they have an EA. How do you not show the value, but how do you shed the light on the value behind this habit forming approach of journaling for their performance?
Yeah. Okay. So let's address the taking notes thing. Okay. So literally when I coach someone, I make sure that they have a pad and a pencil or whatever pen beside them. And I say, write this down. That's how we deal with the notes. Write this down. So what are they going to do? Write it down. Right. And they're more than like, I invite them to write anything else they want down, but some things I want them to write down. So they're in the practice of showing up to our calls with a piece of a pad and a pen, and they know they're going to have to write something down. So that's how we deal with the notes. The second piece is the journaling is a conversation. So there's a lot of reward when you have someone answering on the other side. When you're journaling by yourself and there's nobody there reading or responding to your journal, you're responsible for that habit on your own. When you're working with a coach, and there's a coach on the other end who's asking you more questions, who's interested, you're now curious to know, what is your coach going to say? What's the response? So it's a very, you call it a practice, but it's an interaction is more, I would say, appropriate. And because of that, what happens is it's a fulfilling experience. It's satisfying.
Right.
Because every time you journal, there's someone who cares, who's interested, who's concerned, who's probing, who's engaged with you at a level that nobody else has ever been engaged. So from that standpoint, it's not hard to get people to journal. As far as, do I want to type? They can do, text to type, whatever you call that, right? Like
voice to text. Yes.
Voice to text, they can do that. But also some days you don't want to journal. Some days you've had a really long day and you're like, oh man, I forgot to journal. And what I ask them to do is come to their journal and say, hi, I'm really tired. Haven't had a chance to journal. This is my journal for the day. Have a good night. Boom, finished. Right. But what I'm asking them to do is show up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's so much to unpack in that, like, you know, coming from a place of candor, Kim, when I think of the word of journaling, I think of it very individualistic. Like that's something that's private, right? Like the old school journal with the heart lock and the key,
Yeah.
and you hide it in your drawer.
Like a diary.
Like a diary, essentially. And what the experience that you've created for your clients, which I think is absolutely amazing, is that it's a co-creation in writing, so that it's helping in multiple levels, in the sense of you're getting a load off when you data dump, whether it's verbally or in writing. And especially in writing, it's almost like, I'm going to mess up the word, but cathartic, I think. But
Cathartic. Yes.
cathartic, yes. Like it's a release. And
100%.
and then I really liked what you're identifying with. It's like, okay, what's Kim or what's Coach going to say about this? You know, how can we interact with this? Because it's almost like you're creating such a deep trustful and rooted relationship with your clients, that they have that safe space to really bounce ideas off of, whether it be, you know, the social norm or not.
Well, okay, so let's talk about a few elements that you just brought up. Number one is, if there is no safety, if there is no trust, the client doesn't move forward. So for me, that trust is critical, and making it happen quickly is important. So
Right.
I'm looking for two things: trust and depth. I never want to skim with a client. I want to go deep, and I want to go
Mm-hmm.
fast, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
this back and forth enables that to happen quickly and deeply. So that's
Mm-hmm.
thing number one. Thing number two is, from a coach's standpoint, and I swear on this, I don't understand how coaches coach without a journal. For me, because obviously I've experienced both. For me, when a client journals, it's like walking into a room, the lights are on, I can see where everything is.
Mm-hmm.
When there's no journal, you're walking into a pitch dark room and you're feeling around trying to find the lights.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. I even be like sitting in the coaching seat thinking about what you're saying, Kim. You're correct in that a lot of coaches will spend a good quarter or half a session, what we call contracting. So what is that specific thing that that person really wants to coach about? What makes it so important today? What makes it more of a priority versus other things? What's really coming up for them? What type of outcome do they want out of this session, in lieu of a journal? And that each and every time is quite frankly not efficient. So I'm seeing you, and I'm grateful for you to spread that word around, you know, hey, there's a way when it comes to coaching to interact with your clients, and clients, by the way, you need to get value from this so that you can actually see, you know, formative habits come out of this.
Right. And there's another piece to it. When, you said something really important. You said the contracting, and I love that terminology. I think it's like right on the money, right? But I also think that sometimes clients don't know what they need to be talking about,
It happens.
right?
It happens.
Right. Yeah, it happens all the time. That's why they hire you as a coach, because you're like, I'm struggling. I don't know. I want to get from here to there, but I don't know why I'm struggling.
Yes, yes.
Right. So I think when we talk about the role of the guide, the role of the client is to say, hey, I see some things that are worth discussing. Is there anything you want to talk about? But here are some things that I think are really critical. And I think a lot of times the coach waits for the client to determine what's really critical. And
Mm.
that's where I think in the coaching world, I think coaches have abdicated their responsibility to a great extent.
I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one, Kim, because the style of coaching that I partake in is, I definitely call people up to a higher place. So instead of totally relinquishing insight or being an outside looker in or intuition, etc., you know, I may say something like, hey, Kim, I'm seeing a couple threads here. Do you mind if we pause for a second and look at those?
Great.
And announce them, bring them up. Like, I've seen this trend that, you know, you're speaking in a tone to yourself, XYZ. And I also see this and this. What's resonating with you? Is any of this, or, you know, should we keep going? And I feel that ensuring that clients have option, and I think we're on the same page, by ensuring that clients have option, but you're shedding, to your point, the life in the corners of the cave proverbially, or the hidden stones, is extremely resourceful for them and important because I think the fear that comes up in me in coaching is the concern that I'm attached to their outcome and I want to do
Oh
the
no,
polar opposite and not insinuating the
agreed,
same. Yeah.
agreed. But what you just described was guidance.
Okay.
Exactly
Okay.
that. So that's exactly it. And I am 100% on par with you. I have no attachment to the outcome. I
Right.
don't care. My success as a coach is independent of whether they get a raise, whether they, like any tangible physical outcome that they are seeking, I'm good with it or without it,
Mm-hmm.
right? It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. I'm interested in their well-being,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Extremely well said. Definitely. And it's interesting because oftentimes when leaders haven't experienced a coach, it can be challenging, I find, in some moments explaining the value of it because there's so much of coaching that's not tangible, you know? So it kind of can go into the warm and fuzzies, like, you're feeling free after sessions, or, you have a released burden, or you're seeing changes in the way that you think, or your level of empathy. And I think that there's a huge importance to bring further knowledge and education around these essential human skills to leaders as a part of coaching, because when they see the value in what these subjective or soft skills look like, it really pins the underlying performance of a leader.
Well, that's it. And so the question becomes, how do we, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, tangibilize? How do we make tangible what's not tangible?
Yeah, yeah,
Right? So
yeah.
how do we make tangible what's not tangible? And the truth of the matter is, we know that coaching develops leadership skills. And
Mhm.
we know when leaders have better leadership skills, what happens? Their teams are more productive, more creative, there's
Yes,
less turnover,
yes.
there's greater fulfillment, not only for the team, but for themselves, the leader. There's greater dedication to the work, etc. They feel like they're delivering greater value, therefore they walk away feeling better about their contribution, and
Hmm.
on and on and on. And so there is an ROI that is tangible, but it's hard for leaders to make the connection.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes leaders focus on solving problems versus elevating their skill sets. Oftentimes I've seen working with clients, it's like, I don't really know what to coach about today. I don't have a problem. And it's like, whoa, let's hang on here. Let's talk about these goals that we co-created 6 months ago with regards to, elevating your leadership influence. Is that a problem? No, but you want to increase your performance around it. So let's check in on
Yeah.
that. Like, I think leaders oftentimes are so much in that proverbial firefighting mode that it's challenging for some leaders to think about it from the perspective of they need to elevate their skill sets to make sure that they don't have to be in firefighting mode all the time.
That's true. And,
Yeah.
and what I mean, the journaling element allows us to collect those problems, those storylines,
Mhm.
and we have them all in one place. And now we're able to also connect the dots between one and the next. We're able to see progress. So, for example, let's say you're coaching Joe and Joe has a problem with Mary, right? We're not coaching Mary, we're coaching Joe. Over time, we see that Joe doesn't have a problem with Mary anymore because Joe's approach to Mary has changed, right? So
Mhm.
it allows us to also keep track of progress. And it allows us to go back and say, hey, remember this time? It's in
Right.
writing, you wrote it,
Right.
right? And it's super powerful from that standpoint. But what you're saying is correct. What it also does is allow us to understand their trends,
Right.
right?
Right.
Not only the stories where they struggle, but the themes where they struggle,
Mm,
you know?
mhm. I enjoy that. I enjoy multiple aspects of that. You said something earlier that really sparked a thought in me, Kim, and it was surrounding the thought process of trends, and it's coming back up again. And I think that's where there's that tangible piece that leadership may not see or potentially value on its face, because when we start to understand our behavioral trends or the stories that we're telling ourselves, I think it's super important to kind of expose those edges or growth edges, I should say, so that we can soften them a little bit. And I don't mean soften them by letting go, but to your point with your example, your behavior changes when you start to look at things different. It's just like, my in my childhood, when I used to think about California, I would think about California in a certain persona, right?
Mhm.
My family and I went to California for the first time, half work, half pleasure, in October, and I was able to see California for what California is, which is beautiful. And there's different niches. And, there are mental health issues, but there's some beautiful components of it as well. And oh my God, the food.
Yeah.
So it's like, we often have this personal bias or lens of people, not just things. And until we actually experience them for what it really is or who they really are, you can have those blockers. And I think you shed a lot of light to that, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, not only do we have opinions or biases that are outside of ourselves, we have them internally.
Mm-hmm.
It's just who I am. It's how I operate. It's how it always used to be. It's how I grew up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
we not only tell stories about the world at large, we tell stories about ourselves. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times those stories are simply not useful and they're not even true. And and they contradict the goals we have
Right.
and
Right.
the desires we have. And so sometimes we just have to bring those forward and say, okay, so here's the story you've been telling. Is this going to bring you to where you want to go? And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes the answer is no.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I can glean or reading between the lines, Kim, hearing you say these are the stories you're telling yourself, or here's the trends. This is all, the behind the scenes work that you and your amazing coaches are doing with the clients so that you can see those trends and you can talk strategically versus getting into the weeds of what are those trends.
Exactly. And another thing, and I'm sure you do it too when you coach, is you pay close attention to the language that people use.
Mm.
Right? So the words, and so when the words are in writing, it's even more powerful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when I coach, I take notes, right? Like I'm just
Yeah.
writing. And I write for the purpose of capturing words, language, storyline, etc. So that, they talk and then I go back and I say, you said this, and I literally quote them. So I have
Right.
it written down. And
Right.
I use the words they use because those words have meaning. And sometimes that meaning is diametrically opposed to what they are trying to achieve in life,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right? And
Agreed.
so
And
that
it's
needs to be caught.
Yeah, and clarifying Kim's approach very much like ours from a coaching perspective at Attituity. It's not to say, ha, you said this is a trend. It's to say, hey, like, have you ever thought about it like this? And what is the trend? And what are you benefiting from this type of language toward yourself or others? Yes,
Yeah.
that's very powerful. Absolutely. Kim, I could talk to you forever. A few more questions for you. Can you help us and really truly understand in a few words what is the gift that we're getting from journaling as leaders?
Um, I think there are multiple layers in that answer. Number one is, and you said it before, it's an unloading, right? You're writing things
Mm-hmm.
down, you're getting them off your chest, you're able to see them in front of you. One of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest problems I think we have is that a lot of times we have thoughts that are inside our heads and we are unable to separate ourselves from those thoughts. And
Right.
when we can write something down, we are able to get some distance from that thought and then look at it and say, is that true? Is that accurate? What's the belief underneath there that's causing me to feel the way that I do or causing me to struggle? Do I need to have it? So journaling allows us distance from our own thinking.
Right. Right.
The other piece of it is, nowadays everybody tells you should meditate. We weren't really brought up meditating, right? We didn't grow up, most of us anyway, some I suppose did, but most of us weren't taught to meditate from the age of 2 or 3 years old, but we were taught to write. We were taught our ABCs, we were taught to write. And the truth is, when we write, it slows down our brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that slowing down process has a similar effect to meditation.
Interesting.
So you called it cathartic. It's cathartic and
It is.
therapeutic as well.
Honestly, I haven't connected those dots to be told. Yeah. Wow. I like that. I like the thought process that, you do not have to get into the meditative state if that's not your thing. Because being honest, quite frankly, I get like imposter syndrome around meditating because I don't feel like I'm doing it properly, or I'm distracted, or I'm thinking about the next thing that I have to do. And then I have to continuously draw myself back. But having understood what you're saying around writing and journaling, absolutely, you're in that mind groove, I guess we'll say, in the sense of that data dump and how you're feeling and what's coming up for you and visualizing where you want to go from there. Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful.
It's
I love
funny, you're describing feeling like an imposter when you meditate. They tell you focus on your breath. Every time I focus on my breath, I can't breathe.
this.
Every time, right?
Yeah, but it's so true because sometimes when you draw that much attention to things and you're not used to doing it, it can be a bit of a roadblock. Not to say that meditating is not a good thing, 'cause it is. It just
It's a
not
great thing, not for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah, from a scientific perspective, a health approach. I'm not poo-pooing on it at all. But rather just identifying that, understanding that there's another way that's
Yeah.
a bit more active, and it doesn't have
Yes.
to be precisely, the meditative way is, eye-opening for sure.
And also once you start writing things down, you're able to track. Now,
Hmm.
how long have I been struggling with this problem for? Let's look back at our journals. And
Absolutely.
when you reread your journal, you're also able to problem solve. You're able to see solutions that you weren't able to see before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Really enjoying this, Kim. What would you like to leave our listeners with today?
How about a journaling exercise for fun? Is that cool? Can I do
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So here's the exercise. Grab a piece of paper and a pen, write this down. Here we go. So I'm going to give you two journaling questions. The first question is, what do you really, really want more than anything? And there's two reallys there for a reason, because I want you to think about what you truly deeply want, not what is expected of you, not what your spouse wants for you or your children or your mother, not what you think you should want, but what do you truly deeply want? Write it down. The next thing is write down what's stopping me from having what I really, really want right now. What's getting in the way?
Mm.
Write down all the reasons why you don't have what you currently want.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then after you write both of those down, that's the journaling exercise. Start to look at your reasons and then ask yourself, what do I believe to be true? And are those beliefs actually true?
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
every time you write a reason why you don't have what you want, there's a belief that underlies that reason, and now you're starting to gain some valuable insight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everyone, if you get hung up on this exercise, feel free to reach out to Kim and her team of
Please.
amazing coaches. How can we reach you, Kim?
So you can send me an email. It's kim@frameofmindcoaching.com.
Amazing. And don't forget, everyone, feel free to sign up for our newsletter at intuitiveperformance.com on our website so you can get weekly insights around leadership and all things human excellence for performance. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.